Welcome to Ink and Flame. I'm Tina Kudras, your host, and I'm sitting down today to talk with Vaughn, the writer of Taken Not Destroyed. How are you doing tonight, Vaughn?
I'm doing well. How about you, Tina?
I'm doing good too. I'm excited to get into this one because I'm not overly familiar with this genre. I haven't read any of these books, but I have to admit that you've got a tagline on your Goodreads. The survival is more than living. It is desire, a will, something that burns so deep in one's soul. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good one to start with. So Mission of Destruction is the sequel and it's coming out soon too, eh?
Yes. It releases April 7th.
Awesome.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's very exciting process to go through not just one, but two books to give your readers a sequel.
Yes. A lot of work, but exciting as well.
Yeah, let's dive into some of that work because I can't wait to hear some of your processes. So what was your earliest memory of falling in love with books?
Well, I remember when I was a kid, I loved to read always. And I think it was a Christmas present. You know, I always used to go to the tree and I'd be like trying to shake all my presents. And there was one that was like really heavy. And I was always trying to figure out how I could open my presents so my parents didn't know. And then they figured that out. So then they would wrap under the wrapping with newspaper so you couldn't unwrap them without like totally screwing it up. And then I opened it. It was filled with the entire series of Nancy Drew.
Oh, wow.
Hardback edition. And it was my favorite present ever. So then, my cupboard was lined with Nancy Drew. And that was my favorite. So I remember that when I was a kid.
Your bookshelf started.
Yes.
How many books was that?
Oh my gosh. I would have to Google it. I don't know, but it was a lot.
Like 20?
Like 20 at least. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And how old were you, if you can remember?
No,
you don't remember.
I was young, but yeah, Nancy Drew was my favorite when I was little. And I read,
awesome.
Of course, I read them all, and I read them all multiple times.
Awesome. I've never read Nancy Drew, but my husband read the male counterpart. What was it called?
Boys.
The which one?
The Hardy Boys.
The Hardy Boys. Yeah, that's it.
And there are a lot of crossovers.
Yeah. So I was fantasy right from the get-go, so I never really dove into that genre, but my husband definitely would remember that. So that was the first series that you read. What did you go to after that? Like, was there ever a switch in genre or something next after Nancy Drew?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if, I read all the Harry Potters and I read so much. If you asked me what I read last year, I'd have to pull out my Amazon list to tell you. I'll look at a book and I'm like, I think I read that one, but I'm not sure. It sounds familiar. The cover looks familiar, or have I just seen that before? And then I'll pull it open and I'm like, oh yeah, I've read this book before. I recognize all this.
Have you ever bought a book a second time by accident?
No, because I had Kindle Unlimited for so long, but I would pull it open and say, you downloaded this, and they'd give me a date. And I was like, but I actually got rid of Kindle Unlimited recently because I haven't read a book in like 6 months because writing and reading. I was
just about to ask.
Is so hard. I can't sit down and read. I can't focus on reading a book while I'm writing. And I've been so overwhelmed because I've been trying to write book 2 while editing book 1. And now that I'm editing book 2, I'm working down the road.
Book 3.
Well, no, I'm done with this series, but on my next book. So it's really hard to read.
Yeah, I definitely understand that problem. And I've asked a few people how they keep that balance, and it's probably a tricky thing to do.
I think some people are better at it than I am.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
So was there a defining moment when you realized that you wanted to be a writer?
I don't think that I could put my finger on it, to be honest, but it might have been 10 years ago or maybe more where I wanted to write. So I took a class from an author, a romance novelist, Lori Wilde. Have you ever heard of her?
I have not, but I'm going to look her up as soon as we're done.
Yeah, I've actually never read any of her books. Even to this day, I have not picked up any of her novels. They're very short, if I remember correctly. But she taught a class that I took online. I learned a lot from her, and I still used the techniques that she taught. I kept all the classes. It's just back then, I had young kids, but I also didn't have a story arc that came to an end that somebody would pick it up and be like, yeah, I'm satisfied with that. Or I want to keep reading. That just kind of came to me more recently.
Okay. We'll get into that soon.
Sure.
So what inspired you to take the leap, or who inspired you aside from this?
Just the ideas. I've always had dreams, or I thought about things. Always had a vivid imagination, I suppose you could say.
Okay. You had some people taking up residence in your imagination.
There you go. And then I've always loved reading. So I've had residence in my brain, and I always felt like maybe if I could figure out how to tell their stories and get them on the paper, other people might enjoy their stories. If I could just figure out how to do it.
Right. I love that. Do you remember the first story you ever wrote? Like this 2-book series, was it like the first time you put words to paper, or did you have sort of this transition from little short stories that you wrote to get some imagination going, or what was your process like?
These Armas Locas series actually is not the first story I wrote. I don't really remember the first book I wrote. I could probably dig through my computer and find them.
Yeah.
I just know that the first ones I tried to write never had like good plot, right?
Yeah.
Or the idea was there, the ending wasn't
Not
there
so much. You didn't nail the ending.
Or I didn't nail like the character growth. Like, and I've always seemed to have FMCs that were the center. I think for a female writer, female leads are easier to write.
Mm-hmm.
And she never grew where you would, as a reader, would be like, yes, you couldn't get involved with her and then see her come out on the other side and be like, yeah, that's a great story. Yeah. I could never do that until Taken, Not Destroyed. Okay. At least I never felt like it was doable.
Okay. So that makes it even more exciting to dive into that book because, I love watching the transition of, maybe naive, maybe young, misled, whatever, growing into something so much more powerful. It's so much fun to read. So the Taken, Not Destroyed is so evocative. How did you come up with it, and what does it mean in the context of the story? No spoilers, of course.
Okay, no spoilers. Well, I'll do my best at the no spoilers. I mean, I guess, so Rayella is my main character. She's not necessarily young. She's your average 40-year-old female. So I think a lot of women who sit down and read can kind of connect with her on a personal level. And I did that, so that I could connect with her. And she's kidnapped by a Mexican cartel. And I said, taken, not destroyed, because she was taken and she couldn't let them destroy her.
Okay.
That's where the title came from.
Compelling. Nice. Okay. So did you always know you wanted to write romance with kind of a darker theme, a more intense theme?
No, I mean, I like reading this kind of, storyline, the genre.
Yeah.
But the story wrote itself up here.
Okay.
So I will write what comes to me. If it's there, the characters tell me what to write. I have no control over them. I've heard other authors say that, and I didn't know what they meant until I started writing. Yeah.
So if you had to give these 2 books a spice rating, would you be able to give it a spice rating?
I mean, maybe 3.
Okay.
There's it's spicy. There's open door spice, but there's a lot of plot and story behind it. It's not all about the sexual tension. That's just part of it.
Okay.
So it exists, but that's background. Mm-hmm. It's not about the relationship.
It's the sidebar, not the whole story.
Exactly.
All right. So what's your favorite part of the writing process? The world building, character development, or crafting high stakes, emotional moments? What do you say?
I think it's about watching my characters and their stories develop, because I start and I know, but I'm a plotter, so I have it all written out, and some people would be like, oh my gosh, got all that planning that she does. But then other writers are like, yep, that's me too.
Mm-hmm.
But it still changes once I start writing it. I'm like, I didn't quite follow that plot plan. But that's because my character did something different than I planned it as I was writing. And just watching them grow and change and become different.
Yeah, you start with an idea and it suddenly has muscle and hair color and eye color and memory, right?
Right.
Very cool. So the Armas Locas series explores some, am I saying it right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It explores some bold and intense tropes like obsessive MMCs and love triangles and slow burns. What draws you to these themes, and how do you make them feel fresh and unique?
Well, like a obsessive MMC is kind of an intriguing idea, sensual idea for, I think, a lot of women, a lot of readers. Whether we'd actually want one for ourselves in real life is a different...
I think that's a great point.
It is a different thing. It's kind of cool to read about one, though, to live out that little fantasy. And so writing about one's kind of cool, too, And my character, Segundo or Hugo, you notice a lot of people have two different names in my book.
Okay. Like nicknames and like...
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cartel. They don't go by their real names.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a little, what did my editor call him? Can't remember what she said, but delusional.
Okay.
And so he's obsessive, but kind of delusional. And you sort of feel sorry for him sometimes. At least I do. And so did she.
Okay. So the strong female characters in your books, they definitely are a standout feature. How do you approach the writing female characters who are both vulnerable but really powerful?
I guess it's, we're all vulnerable and we all need to be vulnerable to have good relationships. But I also wanted to show that we have to be strong to make it in life. And I wanted my FMC to be relatable for people. I didn't want them to be so kick-ass and badass that people couldn't say, I feel this person,
Right. That makes sense.
But I also didn't want her to be a complete pushover because I can't read those characters.
I get that.
I mean, there had to be some point where, they were walked on. Otherwise,
where's the strength come from?
They wouldn't grow, right?
Right. So you have a few trigger warnings with your books.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to tell people where they can find those trigger warnings?
Yeah. So the front of the book has a QR code and you can scan that and it takes you straight to my website and you'll find where it explains the trigger warnings for the book.
Okay. I love when authors not only put them in the book, but they also make them so readily available, in the digital world for people to have access to them. So dubious consent and light BDSM are themes that require kind of a delicate balance. How do you ensure that these elements are handled thoughtfully, but still delivering the intensity that readers love?
Well, I guess I say I do my best. I did some research on the BDSM world and try to be as true to the situation as possible.
Okay.
Without being disrespectful.
Okay. So do you feel that that's kind of got like a threshold? Yeah.
And then since I've never experienced, I didn't get too in depth in my descriptions or my scenes. I just kind of tried. That's why I said light. Kind of stayed on the surface.
Okay. That makes sense. And it definitely seems like a very good way to approach that kind of concept when you're, coming at it from just a research perspective.
Yeah. I just gave my FMC time to accept her situation. And MMC allowed her to give consent.
Okay.
So I let them both.
You worked that in.
I worked that into their thought processes so that the reader could see that there was some thought within the characters about the situation.
Okay. That makes sense. And, I've seen it handled too by the name of that book. It was the one that was turned into a movie that everybody loved about 10 years ago.
Gray.
Yeah. So I think that was probably my first exposure. I never read the books. My sister did and absolutely loved them. And I can say that the way that they handle it is very similar. Like they kind of give that gradual progression into the emotional connection that leads to the consent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you had to pick one trope that from the series that you'd write over and over and over again, what would it be? And what?
Well, the strong FMC, always.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think to some degree give you somebody that you kind of talk to in the back of your mind a little bit when you're facing stuff in your own life?
Yeah, sometimes, or maybe just someone I can admire for growing through hard times.
Yeah, that's cool too, I think. So let's talk about the characters in Taken, Not Destroyed. What's the most challenging part of creating the dynamic between the obsessive MMC and the strong FMC?
I think making her look strong without actually putting her in real danger or getting her killed.
Mm-hmm.
Because it has to be real world to some degree, and she is in a cartel. Yeah. And so she has to be strong, but yeah, these people, I mean, at what point are they going to just kill her, right?
Yeah. And you keep her looking strong, but not, of course that worked that way. You don't want it to be predictable.
That too, right? Uh-huh. And I mean, and maybe some of the things I did have her do might have gotten her killed in real life. I mean, or, some of the things in the second book that happened may not have really worked out in real life or whatever, but I mean, it's fiction, right?
Exactly. That is why so many people dive into the fantasy genre in the first place. It's escapism.
Exactly. Yeah.
So do you have a favorite character in the series?
So yes, he's in the second book though.
Okay. Well, we can maybe have you on a second time and we can talk about him then. Do you have a favorite in the first?
Well, I mean...
Or somebody that surprised you? Somebody that started talking upstairs and then kind of just became a surprise character for you?
Well, this is kind of funny. So I decided to write a bonus chapter. I had not planned on writing it, but I was like, well, I want people to sign up for my newsletter. So I'm going to write this bonus chapter. And when they sign up for the newsletter, they can get this bonus chapter. And I wrote it on this one character, Camilla, who, I'll be honest, I didn't have a lot of plans for her. And then I wrote this chapter and I was like, wow, she turned into be something I didn't know she was going to be. I mean, she wrote her chapter and it fit perfectly into the book, but I didn't know she was going to be like that or have any of those
stories.
I know. I didn't know she was going to have any of those external thoughts or plans or be like that, but she wrote herself. And when I look back at the book, I'm like, man, that's perfect. And I was like, I wonder what people are going to think about this. Nobody tells me. I don't know what they think. Like, I don't have any idea.
So then we have to ask everybody to tell you now.
I know. Nobody's told me. I don't know if anybody reads it. I don't know if I just wrote it for myself.
That's awesome. I love it when, you kind of hear about this character that the writer's writing along and then all of a sudden this character that they didn't expect to be very significant becomes an arc. A whole entire arc. So a secondary chapter is also perfect. Or a bonus chapter.
Bonus chapter, yeah.
Yeah. So the love triangle and mission of destruction adds so much tension. How do you approach that writing with the emotional complexity that is that dynamic?
Well, I guess I just try to do my best to show the jealousy as best I can. And a lot of the triangle and mission of destruction stems from Rayella's internal struggle, trying to figure out everything that happened to her in the first book and growing into who she is. And then she's got these two guys and also trying to figure out what the world says is a normal relationship and what she thinks it should be and what a guy should be. So it's actually a triangle made of her own issues, and then the jealousy of someone who likes her. So it's not your typical love triangle, should I say.
Okay. So the setting of Armas Locas series feels very, very vivid and alive. How do you do the cityscapes and how do they influence the story and the character's journey?
In book 1, she's trapped in a mansion and her only escape beyond the 4 walls is her view out her window. So every time we kind of look out her window, this is her only step to freedom. So I guess describing that view sometimes is all that you have for her thoughts of freedom.
Okay. And what about your your main male character? What did you say his name is? He's got two.
Segundo.
Segundo.
Second. It's second in Spanish.
Okay. Segundo. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you get to see from his perspective at all throughout this process where she's trapped?
Yeah, he doesn't focus too much on the house because it's his house. Like, it's where he lives.
Mm-hmm.
He does go on a mission for the cartel. So that was a little challenging for me to write that particular scene that was in a small city in Mexico, and I'd never been there. So I'm trying to, do the Google search.
Yeah. Research.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. So if you could live in one of the places that are featured in your series, which one do you think it would be?
I mean, the weather here is cold. It's freezing. So, if I could get rid of the economics and live in Mexico, I'd do it.
That's fair. Part of my family is actually in Mexico right now.
Yeah. It's a nice vacation.
Yeah, for sure.
If I could, not get kidnapped.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to go the way she goes, right? Are there any real life places or experiences that inspired the settings for your books?
Not really. I chose my settings based on logistics to fit my storylines, honestly.
Okay.
Google Maps and, okay, here. Okay, this works. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you suppose the most challenging scene to write in Armas Locas series has been for you?
Well, like I said, it was the scene where Segundo was out with the cartel.
Oh, yeah. I guess we already talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, I guess I skipped ahead.
That's okay.
Where the Zappas attacked. Just all of that was difficult for me I've never been there. And so I had to kind of do the whole Google Earth mapping so I could see everything and describe it to the best of my ability without getting too descriptive. You don't want to take away from the actual fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you have any aha moments or breakthroughs while writing the series that changed the direction of the story?
Well, book 2 is filled with a lot of technical stuff that I spent a lot of time talking with my husband about, who is very smart about that stuff. So I had a lot of aha moments when talking with him because he is very smart, and it helped me kind of direct a little bit of that, but I can't tell you too much.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, not really with book 1. No.
Okay.
I mean, I had a few like, yeah, that's better. That will fit better. No, nothing I can
Not
really
necessarily
say.
The aha moments. Yeah. So are there any fun or surprising behind the scenes stories from the writing process that you can share with us? Some things that happened while you were writing that was part of the journey.
Well, I always think it's the Google searches that are the funniest, right? If anybody could come back and see the stuff that you're searching on Google. What happens when you die in Mexico? A U.S. citizen dies in Mexico. How do you cover it up?
Oh, wow. People suddenly watching your computer with a certain amount of interest. The Google searches on this lady's computer is crazy.
Yeah. Stuff like that. Google is, if they kept track of you, I'm sure they'd be wondering what the heck you were up to.
Then you just show them the book and you're off the hook.
Maybe. You never know.
So how do you handle feedback from your readers, especially when it comes to the more controversial and intense elements of your books?
Well, I mean, I do know that my book won't be for every reader. Not everybody will like it. That's okay. I didn't like every book I picked up either.
Mm-hmm.
But I love my readers, so I love anybody who's willing to pick it up and give it a shot. Some doesn't mean that if somebody doesn't like it, it doesn't hurt,
Yeah.
Because it's still my baby.
Yeah.
So I guess I just know that it won't be for everyone.
Yeah.
And not everybody's gonna, like everything about it either,
Right. So I had a conversation with Jessica Lee on my first podcast that I did with Ink and Flame. And I asked her the same type of question. And her response was beautiful. She said, whenever I get frustrated or disappointed about somebody's review, I just read what people say about Tolkien. And it always makes me feel better.
Oh, what do they say about him?
I didn't look them up, but she said that there's some people who just didn't like his style, and he's a legend. So really, what difference does it make? There's always, like you said, some that's not for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, somebody will love it and some people will not. And
And you're writing for the ones that love it.
Well, exactly. And I'm happy that people are even willing to pick it up and give it a try.
So what's your writing routine like? Do you have any kind of rituals or habits or things that help you get into the zone?
Well, I plot, I plan, I write, I read.
So what's the plotting process for you? Do you have a computer or do you have like a murder board on your wall? What do you have?
Well, that would be kind of cool, but no. It's all on the computer. I use Microsoft Note. And I have another author recommended it. So I use that and I have like all these little tabs and I have all my tabs labeled and I have, characters. I do character interviews. All my characters have personalities and I write everything out about my characters, their personalities, everything I want to know about them. I go and Google pictures so I know what they look like. I stick them in there and then I have a section that talks about the storyline and I break it all down, the whole storyline from start to finish, and it breaks it out. You know how a movie has a beginning, a middle, an end, and they break stories up that way. So mine's that broken up. I type out everything that's going to happen, and then each chapter has the same thing. So I break it down by chapters. And
that's some extensive plotting right there.
But I only plan 2 chapters ahead because my character will screw me up if I go too far. They'll change stuff. So I only I've tried to do the whole book and no, can't. They'll change everything up.
You end up in a different place.
Yes. So I only do 2 chapters at a time. So
do you listen to music or create any playlists while writing? No, eh?
It's got to be quiet. And I love all these authors who come out with playlists for their book, but it doesn't flow within me to do that. I don't know enough about music to do that. I mean, you'll turn on the radio and you'll be like, who sings that? And I'll be like,
I just like it.
I don't know. So I couldn't do that. But if I have a reader who wants to do that for me, I'll take it.
The playlist to the book after it's been written.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that leads to another question. Is there ever music that plays in your life that you think to yourself, yeah, that's my character? Not really?
No, I guess I'm not connected to music that way, I suppose.
And that's okay. So if you could have one piece of advice for aspiring authors who want to write a dark romance, what do you think it would be, aside from just do it?
Yeah. I would say besides writing and figuring out how to get it on page, definitely have an editor, because I've read books from authors where I've been like, did you have an editor? Okay. I feel like there's definitely a place for an editor, and I love mine to death. The book belongs to myself and my editor. We have done this. This is a team effort for sure. I never knew how much you needed a good editor. So kudos to her name. I love her. We have the same name.
Well, then, thank you very much, editor.
Yeah, exactly. And then do your homework. So find out what it takes to publish, but not just publish. If you're an indie publisher, you are your own cheering section. You are your own social media. You have to tell everybody about your book and expect them to say, I love your book as much as you do. And then they have to want to pick it up and read it. And there are people out there who will believe you. You just have to find them. And that is not an easy thing to do. And I didn't know any of this. I was publishing November 11th, and I didn't learn any of that until August 15th.
Okay. So you had a bit of work ahead of you to get a cheerleading squad.
I had a lot of work. And I had a very small cheerleading squad when I published. It was very tiny. And so I still have a lot of work to do before I publish my second book, because I still need a lot of people to read book 1 before they can read book 2, because it's not a standalone. You can't read it without reading the first book.
The first book, yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, hopefully we'll get some attention with Ink and Flame to try and get some love for you, because I think that the way that you've handled this story is such a very well thought out approach. And it sounds like I said, this isn't my genre. I've always lived in the fantasy realm, but you have me definitely paying attention. I think that I am quite excited to read it. So
thank you.
I have until April 7th to see. That's the one drawback of doing Ink and Flame right now, is that
you're very busy.
I've now got this great big huge TBR that just keeps building.
Yes, I'm sure.
I'm currently reading one of the books to one of the podcasts, and then March 1st, I'm joining onto another buddy read with another author that we've already talked with, and now I want to read yours, so I'm going to be busy.
Yeah.
So doing this weekly show is going to create this endless stream of books that I want to read. And I love supporting the indie authors because it takes a lot of courage to do what you guys do. And I think that it's such an incredible transition that, KDP has created, and other styles where you can self-publish. I think it's incredible. So what's your favorite guilty pleasure trope in romance? For example, forbidden love, forced proximity. What ones really get you to pick up a book?
I'll be honest, I did not know what a trope was until I started in this publishing world. I had no social media presence, so I didn't know what Booksta was. Somebody said Bookstagram, and I'm like, huh? What's that? No clue.
Is there an app for that?
I thought it was a separate app than Instagram. So I was Googling Bookstagram. I didn't realize it was just a little community inside of Instagram. Yeah, exactly. That's how ignorant I was. So when I joined Instagram, I was like, oh my gosh, how do we do all this stuff? I was just so overwhelmed. So
you've done a really good job. I've seen your Instagram. You've got lots of great pictures, and you've done lots of posts. You created quite the little display on there. I think it's awesome.
Well, thank you. I try to copy off people.
Learning from people is important, and that's the way we go. Jumping into a podcast for the very first time, I kind of had to pay attention to people too, so it's not really copying.
Well, okay, true. It's just picking what you like from other people's styles.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's creating your own.
Yeah. So I usually read the blurbs, which is funny because I hate writing blurbs. It is so hard. I never realized how hard it was until I had to write my own. I'm like, man, but I really rely on those silly blurbs. That's how I choose my books. I'm like, it's super important to get that thing down right.
Yeah. The elevator pitch.
Yes. The elevator pitch.
What's your elevator pitch?
I know. And then everybody says, what's your book about? And I'm like, read the back.
This question. Yeah. I spent a long time writing the back, so read the back.
Exactly. So at my first signing at Flirty in Kansas City, I handed my book out. Here, read. I didn't know what to say.
You'll get there.
My husband was like,
so if you could have dinner with one of your characters, who do you think you'd choose?
Well, definitely not the cartel leader, El Breton. And when you read the book, you'll understand why I say that. It would be my main character, my main female character, Ray. I mean, it seems like the easy answer, but the books are about her. If you like her,
you like her.
Yeah.
So what's next for you?
Well, the next books, I am actually moving into fantasy.
Yay! Awesome. Have you started your plotting process for your fantasy?
I actually just started chapter 10.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. My book 2 was at the first section of editing. I was doing all my plotting, all my world building, all that stuff, which my world building notes are insane because my next set of books. The plan right now is 3 standalone books, which will set up the dystopian human world, explain why it changes. So it'll explain what happened to shape the world. And then there's going to be a 4-book series, which will tell what happens between the fairy and this dystopian human world to save fairy. That's the plan. That
is awesome.
That's what's floating around up here.
Up there.
Yeah. And it's all kind of mapped out in my little notes, but I've started on the first book.
That's exciting. I think that's so exciting. I love that.
And my newsletter people got a little
tidbit.
Tidbit.
Yeah. Cool. So where can listeners find you online and maybe talk a little bit about your newsletter?
Okay. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook, the most active on Instagram, Vaughn Author, to shove all the words together.
Vaughn
Author. That's my Instagram handle. And then Facebook, Vaughn Author, www.facebook.com, Vaughn Author. I try to make it real simple.
Yeah, you're not alone. And you also have a website, you said.
I do, svonauthor.com. I was just happy it was all available.
You do have the advantage of it being your name, so.
I do.
So, and can we have a little peek at your book, Taken Not Destroyed? This is what, I think the cover is just stellar. I love it.
So thank you to Midlart.
Okay.
They did my cover design and they are awesome. Very easy to work with. They did the cover for both my books. And this is actually my special edition. So I have...
look at it. Very nice.
So this, my e-commerce store opens on the 3rd of March. So you can buy these direct from me.
Okay.
From my e-commerce store.
Awesome. And finally, what do you hope that readers would take away from the Armas Locas series after they've read it?
So this, I'm going to look at my notes because I wrote these out and I felt like they're very interesting.
That's perfect. I like that.
So there are some heavy topics, like heavy real world topics in this series. And every month when I send out my newsletter, I make sure to write something about sex trafficking because this is in my book. And I'm not sure why this was part of the book. It's what came to my mind. But I feel like in the fiction book, it's just, you're thinking this is just fiction, but this is not fiction. This is a real world issue. It happens more than anybody realizes. There at the back, I have a statistic in the back of the book. Okay, maybe I don't have the statistic, but I tell you more about it. I just feel like bringing awareness to people about sex trafficking is one of the biggest takeaways that can come from my books. But I also feel like every woman is entitled to be treated with love and respect from their partner, no matter who that partner is. And my main character didn't have that. And it's almost like she had to die to figure that out, which is, it's terrible, but that's what happened. And then after you kind of get through book 2, I wanted people to realize that there is not a normal type of relationship. There are all flavors, just like there are all kinds and flavors of people. And it's what entices and excites you. That's normal for you. And it's okay.
I think that's an incredible takeaway. I think that is what people need to grasp in general, that it's okay to be whatever your flavor is. Exactly. I love that. So thank you so much, Vaughn, for sitting down with Ink and Flame tonight. I really enjoyed chatting with you. And I honestly, now I have to pick up another book. So it's a new one for my list. And so I can get that one on Amazon now, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Where else is it available?
You can buy the paperback from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and somewhere else. I have a books too.
Ingram?
Yeah. No. So my link tree has all my buyer sites on it.
Perfect. That's good.
So you could just click buy now and it'll take you right there. I have a universal buyer link. So you can find all the places where you can buy it. It's only digitally available from Amazon because I'm on Kindle Unlimited.
Okay.
You can pre-order my second book. And then once my e-commerce store opens on the 3rd, you can buy direct from me. Okay. And I will be opening pre-orders paperbacks for my second book.
Okay. So when are the pre-orders going to start? Do you have a
For
date
my
for them?
paperbacks?
Yeah.
The 3rd, March 3rd,
Okay.
when my e-commerce store opens.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So thank you again for sitting down with us. And I hope you have a fantastic launch to your second book on April 7th.
Thank you.